We will get this committee hearing of the Arts, Park, Health, Aging, and LA River Committee started. I am joined by my colleagues Gil Cedillo and Joe Buscaino, and I am going to request that we take items 8 and 9 on consent if there are no objections.
So moved. Second.
And that brings us to item 1.
Item number 1, communication from the mayor relative to the appointment of Mr. Salvatore D. Costanzo to the El Pueblo de Los Angeles Historic Monument Authority for the term ending June 30th, 2014, and the subsequent term ending June 30th, 2018. Subsequent to the release of this agenda, we have also received the City Ethics Commission report.
Thank you, Mr. Lidd, and I would invite our colleague Joe Buscaino to make introductions.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Colleagues, it's great to have a dear friend before us, Sal Di Costanzo. And before I ask him to say a few words, I want, if I may, first thank the mayor for this opportunity, this nomination, to have some eyes and ears representing CD15 in this at the El Pueblo, which is such an historical site, an incredible treasure that we have in the city of Los Angeles of such historic significance. And to have Sal, Sonny, as we call him, before us, he is an incredible leader in our harbor area community. He embodies the rich traditions of giving back and doing good for others. Son of Italian immigrants, he has a deep love of his roots and his culture. But most importantly, Sonny's a loving husband and father. Hard worker, gives back to his family, and also just loves his city. And to have this opportunity before us, to have a representative sit on this commission representing the 15th District is also an honor for us as a community. And again, our thanks to the mayor for putting forward this nomination. And Mr. Di Costanzo, he also has a great history of, and also a middle school teacher, a hard worker down at the docks, and just one of the best and brightest that we can find in our district. So, Sal, tell us something about yourself and why you want to take this on.
Well, Councilman Buscaino, thank you for a glowing and humbling introduction. I appreciate it very much. Thank you to yourself for your confidence and to the mayor's office as well. I have just met with Councilman O'Farrell and had an opportunity to give a little bit of my background. I'm very fortunate to be given this opportunity to serve the great city of Los Angeles. It is a world-class city, hands down. Arguably, maybe the greatest city in the United States. New York will argue different, but we have things that they don't. And as far as El Pueblo is concerned, I think it's a unique opportunity because I really view it as the birthplace of the city, not only because it is, but because it represents so many different important areas of the city. Its art, its culture is a smattering of the different peoples that have contributed to this place. It wouldn't be the city of Los Angeles without its beginnings in El Pueblo. It was, first of all, a place where immigrants settled, and I can relate to that. Being, as you said, the son of immigrants, I can relate to that clearly. It was born on the river, and the river is important. Water is always where cities are born. And the hard work of the people that were here, the faith of the church that set up the missions, it all came together to create a garden. And out of that garden, Los Angeles grew. So as a member of the commission, I hope to tend the garden for the city of LA.
Thanks, honey.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Mr. Costanzo, thank you. I was able to thank you a few minutes ago for stepping up and volunteering in a greater capacity. And for those who aren't aware, Mr. Costanzo has been volunteering in his community of San Pedro at the local level for many, many years. So I think he brings a wonderful base of volunteer activism to a wonderful resource, a historic resource that is El Pueblo, and I'm just really pleased, and I feel that that is a wonderful base for you to be a real asset to that commission, and I want to thank you for stepping up. A question I have is just general thoughts in terms of El Pueblo and the visitor experience, and how do we enhance this incredible resource so that we continue on that momentum of making it a world-class destination in a world-class city. Some of your thoughts.
I've been fortunate enough over the years to visit El Pueblo as a child with a school field trip. As I was reflecting on this, I thought back to I really thought it was just Alvera Street, actually, at that time, interchangeably. Then in my time at USC, I would come to downtown Los Angeles and visit El Pueblo and see how it's changed from then to now. As we discussed, the city of Los Angeles has really undergone a transformation from 1992 forward. And El Pueblo, I recently had an opportunity to look up the strategic plan that they've put together for 2013 to 15. It looks very thoughtful. It looks thorough. And I've noticed that on the back where there's some charting that will keep track of the progress, there are many items that are in progress. There are a few that are marked red as being completed, and I think that if we prioritize well, as I learn more about how the commission works, how the different departments within El Pueblo work, I'd like to change as many of the greens to reds as possible. It is really an underutilized jewel, perhaps. We have a thriving entertainment industry here. We have a growing hospitality sector, and I think that if we market El Pueblo properly through its various arts programs, through the music offerings, that we can attract more and more people to stay solely for the purpose of coming to see El Pueblo,
Right.
or extend their stay. And so I would focus on that.
Wonderful, thank you. And I want to mention we're joined by our colleague, Mr. Tom Labonge. And just my last comment to you is it's probably a given that you're fairly excited about the incoming Italian-American Museum, which will open up pretty soon here.
Yes, I figured that went without saying.
So it's I was able to tour the site many weeks ago. Mariana Gatto gave me a wonderful tour, and it's going to be just yet another great asset, adding to the urban fabric and the great diversity that helped define Los Angeles way back in the day.
If there is a Little Italy in the city of Los Angeles, it's probably in San Pedro at this point. While it was in Chinatown at one point, it's spread out. Our populace is spread out far and wide enough where San Pedro probably is the closest thing to Little Italy we have. So if I can serve as a conduit between that community and this great center with its Italian Hall,
Yes.
I'm happy to do so.
Terrific. Thank you. Colleagues?
So what do you do for the Longshoremen?
Well, the ILWU is the union that is in contract with the Pacific Maritime Association to load and unload all the various forms of transmodal transportation in the harbor. We unload and load ships. We unload and load rail.
Is that what you do? You unload ships?
We do. I do.
Okay. Back to Italian Hall. So, I worked on that with Joe Sorrell, and I was we funded both that and the Chinese Museum at the same time. What are your thoughts about how to, as you said, so that's the origin. Lincoln Heights had a very rich Italian community, as did Boyle Heights. And so how do you see promoting the Italian Hall and the Italian Museum and making it destination points throughout the city?
Well, once the hall is completed, I know there was already certain events that are planned, like the Taste event and different cultural events. As the hall comes into completion, it's a matter of making a grassroots appeal to the various, whether they be religious clubs, civic clubs, university clubs, to make the resources available at Italian Hall accessible to everyone, and have an active calendar of events to draw people from all over the city to the hall. Once they're there, and I went through there recently, even though there was construction going. I probably shouldn't have gone through, but what the heck, the door was open, and so I walked in. And you can feel the echo of the meetings, of the dances, of the camaraderie that took place there. And I think once the Italian Americans step foot through and go over the tiled entryway, they'll be back.
Wonderful. And we are joined by our colleague, Cohen Price. Welcome, Mr. Price. Thank you. Mr. Labonge?
Yeah, thank you very much. And nobody bad comes out of San Pedro. So,
I won't hold you to that.
no, that's all right. I love San Pedro. But I think, as you said so eloquently about water, and all the work that's going on there, I think it's important. Use your history, Michael Espinoza. Is that correct, Mr. Espinoza? Chris, I know, your brother, Michael, but both Espinozas are great, but you got a better mother. Were you good to her yesterday? Okay, good. So the Espinoza brothers are great contributors. One is Chris at El Pueblo, one is Michael in the CLA's office, I believe, but city clerk. Okay, good job. They move around a lot. They're all good. But the key is they want to get things done, and so he's got a lot of focus on here, and sometimes people go and are disappointed there. We want to cut the disappointment out, create it that people feel more at home. I'd like to see more activity and opening up the Main Street side as well with life and people. I'd like to see more kioscos out of the central alley of Alvera Street to the plaza so people can look at the beauty of the buildings. I'd like to see you work with the MTA, which now owns the Union Station, celebrating 75th anniversary, and they just doing a master plan. They have been vision of making it a gateway where you would come out of Union Station into the park. I want you to make it easy for tour buses to come in and come out, because that's the lifeblood of that, and improving the docent program that is there, that should be enhanced so more people. There's like 485 docents at the Los Angeles Zoo who give their time. I'm sure we could find 50 people who are passionate about our city's history who would be interested in that. And also, I'd like to look at the bike rental facility that's not there, because people want to ride bikes. And people now, because of Metrolink train and the Gold Line and other lines, Blue Line, Expo Line, they'll come to Central Los Angeles and ride a bike in the central part of the city and then do that. Many cities have bike rental facilities near their train stations, and I think that's an expert thing to do. Also connect, you mentioned the Italians. I tell the Italians, they on their Columbus Day, they should have a walk from the Italian Hall to the county court here, which has a plaque for Columbus, right on the, just to get the walk started, make the walk. I did work with I'm a Catholic, but I did work with the Catholics. I work with everybody. Okay, so, but I said walk from the plaza, and they do, to the cathedral. Make the connection. Look to widen Main Street's sidewalks, either over the freeway or whatever, so that you could connect it. There's a great gap. How many people who work for the city, raise your hand in this room right here? And keep your hands up in the last year if you've walked to Alvera Street for lunch. Okay?
Oh.
Just less than half. Less than half. So more should. And we should look to members to encourage El Pueblo, just to have a vision over your fence, Chris, to encourage general services to make better use of the upper grounds of the mall, which is not in love. You know, we've got to make more love there. So all that is real important. I know Mr. Garcetti's very clear on that. He picked a great one here. I think I covered everything that I said. I just really want to thank you for what you're doing. It is about our history. This civic center is the largest civic center outside our nation's capital, and connecting it to El Pueblo and to Union Station, although not in a mall form, but in a mall form here, is only better for people to know how proud they are. And I greatly support the hop-on and hop-off buses that bring tourists around the town, because people want to find real, and real is Los Angeles. Thank you for your service.
Thank you, Mr. Labonge. Mr. Price?
No, I just want to thank you for your willingness to serve. I know you'll do an outstanding job, and that you'll bring the kind of energy and enthusiasm that this area needs. So we're working with you.
Thank you.
Terrific. I'm hearing that, something else, Mr. Cedillo?
Yeah, just, Mr. Labonge, the state actually did widen the sidewalks there.
Right.
They widened them, they put the benches, and they put the trees. I think that cost about $5 million. That's when the legislature would take those surpluses and not save them for a rainy day, but, recognize that the rainy day is today and that they went ahead and did that.
Right, that's good.
99, 2000, 2000.
Yeah, and I'd love to see some artists extended with a permit process over the wider sidewalks then, over the freeway. So you make this connection, this draft that. So it's just all there, but now you put your energy to it.
Sal, do you gather that you have your work cut out for you?
I'm working on my list.
All right. I would like to move this appointment forward for approval to the full city council without objection.
Without objection.
So ordered.
Do we have a date in
You're on your
council, Mr. Chair?
We do not have a date yet, but we'll work with the mayor's office and
Okay, great.
come up with one.
Wonderful. Thank you and congratulations.
Thank you, gentlemen.
And that brings us to item 2.
Item number 2, LA for Kids Steering Committee Report, Ordinance and Resolution relative to the 2014-2015 Proposition K assessment. We've also received what is one of the addendums to the overall report. It's the city engineer's report, makes up a revised version.
Thank you. And
Good afternoon,
Please.
council members. Maria Ramos with the Office of the CAO. The item before you today is the Prop K Program Assessment Report. It provides recommendations to make adjustments to the current year budget, as well as proposes the expenditure plan for the upcoming fiscal year and the upcoming 5-year planning cycle. The majority of the program funds are proposed for capital development, and the balance of the funds would be used for program administration, maintenance, and debt service. The recommended budget is largely reflective of the funding priorities provided by council appointees participating in this year's funding deliberations. The most notable components of the reprogramming actions include the realignment of funding has resulted in an increase in specified local projects. Adjustments to future competitive funding cycles is recommended to complete remaining projects over the next 2 cycles. The benefits of this would include the ability to free up capacity for specified projects. It would help us to work to completion of remaining projects that are designated in the ballot measure. We recommend awarding 3 of the remaining 4 categories in the 9th cycle, and these categories include aquatic upgrades, lighting, and acquisition of parks and natural lands. So then the 10th and final cycle would focus on the last remaining category, which is youth, schools, and recreation projects. In terms of the general fund impact, the majority of the projects funded under this program are operated by Rec and Parks, and based on estimates provided by the department, we estimate that the general fund impact would be about $5.5 million for projects currently in development. This includes operations and maintenance. These estimates would be addressed accordingly as projects come online through the annual city budget process. In terms of revenues, projected for 2014-15, the program would reimburse the general fund for an estimated $4.9 million. This includes administration, facility maintenance, and project delivery. As the clerk has stated, we are submitting revised documents for the record. Subsequent to the release of this report, we found some technical errors to Attachment 10, which is the city engineer's report, and we are requesting that the committee accept and act on the corrected version, which would ensure consistency of data across all the documents. And if you have any questions.
thank you. Ms. Ramos, is this the document you're talking about?
Correct, yes.
Okay. And can you just elaborate a little bit on that?
There's a section in there for the bonds. I don't know the page offhand. I believe it starts on page 17. So there's a chart towards page 17, on the bottom of page 17.
He just asked.
Oh, I'm sorry, page 18. And on that last column where it says Proposition K allocation, there were 3 projects that the numbers were just reported incorrectly, so they just needed to be updated.
And these are under item 2, the long term?
The projects, if I remember correctly, are under 3 long-term. The zoo, Children's Discovery Center was updated, as well as on number 4, the zoo, Children's Discovery Center was updated. And on page 20, MLK Therapeutic Center, that number was also updated.
Mr. Chair, I just would suggest that they give a 3-page to council listing all the projects without all this stuff so they could do that, because this has all been worked through so council members could identify easily what's in their district, because it's this thick and it takes a lot to find it. That'd be helpful, because you got to do more work anyway, right?
Good afternoon, Bernice Hollins, Office of the CAO. That snapshot look that you're essentially asking for is provided in Attachment A. That's simply the list of projects that's funded in the upcoming year. And that, Maria, is your Attachment 2?
Where's A?
For engineer?
No, it's A list. The A list
yeah.
of projects for next year.
Well, we don't have the A list right now. You got the A list?
Yeah.
It's included as part of the report. We'll circulate it specifically
but
to your
to all the
office.
members.
Yes.
Let them all know. Because
Yeah,
many of this, Mr. Chair, is new to our colleagues on the council. You, with your veteran of service under Mr. Garcetti as the chief field man, knows this backwards and forwards, but others may not have that, so I think it's good to educate the council on this role.
Yeah, that's a great point. I know that when I was at the office of my predecessor, I would meet with the Prop K Steering Committee monthly, and we would get, the updates on all the projects that were in the 13th. So I think it would be helpful not just to our colleagues, but to me as well in this new role that I'm in. That's a great suggestion, Mr. Labonge. Thank you.
Who's on the steering committee?
The CAO, CLA, and Mayor's Office.
And one from each of the council offices.
I'm sorry?
And one from each of the council offices.
On the steering committee?
Jerry Miller.
Oh, Jerry Miller. CLA represents the council
No, I'm sorry,
offices.
I thought, which committee are the council offices represented on?
The council offices specifically appoint citizens, basically, to serve on our budget deliberation process. That process begins in October. So those funding recommendations that your appointees serve are always folded into the budget.
So why don't we do this? Based upon your recommendation, Mr. Labonge, is let's also just, I think for all our colleagues, present a one-page sort of primer on the role of the steering committee, et cetera, and that process, just Reader's Digest version, and then the projects broken down by council district. I think that'll be particularly helpful.
Okay.
And I think, how are we in terms of, we need to move this forward, yes? Otherwise we're working against the calendar.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so
Right away.
To meet the
Tuesday.
deadline.
Yeah, so I'd recommend that we move this forward, and then you can provide the supporting documents when it comes to council.
Okay.
Terrific. Any further?
Just one other thing, the most powerful committee in City Hall is the Municipal Facilities Committee, which is similar to this here, which is the CAO, Chief of Staff of the Mayor or the designee, and the CLA. And those are real powerful committees that make big determinations about big dollars going for our city's future. So to the new members, I just mentioned that. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So without any further comments, I think we can move this forward without objection.
Thank you.
So moved. Thank you.
Thank you.
And that brings us to and there are no public comment cards, by the way. That brings us to item 3.
Item number 3, Bureau of Engineering report relative to the status of various projects connected with the Los Angeles River Revitalization Master Plan.
Welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair O'Farrell. I'm Carol Armstrong with the LA River Project Office of the Bureau of Engineering. Good afternoon, everyone.
Doctor?
And I'm Mike Affelt. I work for Carol in the Bureau of Engineering, LA River Project Office.
Okay, so I'm just going to run through some of the highlights of our regular progress report. On April 7th, the LA River Cooperation Committee met. That is the partnership recommended by our city's master plan that involves the city, multiple departments in the city, the County of Los Angeles, and the Army Corps of Engineers. And at that meeting, the committee recommended 3 new projects. One is the LA River Veteran Tribute Park and Gardens project in Council District 6, and that is being led by the LA Conservation Corps. The other is the Taylor Yard Bridge project, which is in Council Districts 1 and 13, and that bridge will be a bicycle and pedestrian bridge and also carry a LADWP recycled water pipeline across the river. And the third is the downtown LA River in-channel bike path. That is a project of Friends of the Los Angeles River, the LA River Revitalization Corporation, and the LA River Artists and Business Association, and that is in Council Districts 1, 13, and 14. I also wanted to highlight that the LA River Natural Park and Greenway project, which is in Council District 2 on the north bank of the river between Coldwater and Whitsett, will be it will be presented at a public meeting in Studio City on the 13th. So this week. And then our partners at the county have 2 grand openings coming up. The first is June 21st. That's the North Valley Heart Greenway on the north bank of the river between Coldwater and Fulton, also in Council District 2. And the second is on July 12th. That's the Headwaters Greenway on both banks of the river at the very beginning of the river between Owens Mouth and Mason. I also wanted to mention that we were very excited to participate in the first ever LA River Town Hall in Sacramento, which was hosted by Assemblymember Jimmy Gomez from District 51, and that was held last week on the 7th, and that is related to his legislation, Assembly Bill 1922, which is the Greenway Sustainment Act. At that town hall, there was also participation from Assemblywoman Cheryl Brown and Assemblyman Sebastian Ridley Thomas. The MRCA was there, Miguel Luna from Urban Semillas was there, and Ted Bardicki from the mayor's sustainability team was there, and Barbara Romero, the Board of Public Works Commissioner, was there, and there were comments from the Trust for Public Land. It was a very nice and collegial experience, and putting a focus on the importance of greenways, which we already know very well in Los Angeles. On the 10th, just this past weekend, we participated in a forum held by the local chapters of the American Planning Association and the American Society of Landscape Architects, who went on a river tour and then held a panel at Golden Road Brewery near the river in Council District 13. And there's a lot of energy, a lot of excitement on the part of both of those groups. I also wanted to acknowledge my river brother, Michael Affelt, and my boss, Interim City Engineer Deborah Weintraub, are going to participate at the American Council of Engineering Companies Forum this week, where they will receive the award for Innovator of the Year, being awarded to the LA River office.
All right. Very good. Congratulations.
So I wanted to also thank you very much for hosting the first and ongoing annual LA River Day in Council on the 4th of next month. We're very excited about that. And I also wanted to let everyone know that the LA Business Council will be recognizing 51 community stakeholders for 51 miles at their luncheon on that same day. We're very excited about the recreation zone opening on the 26th, and we're also very excited that Mayor Garcetti has issued a challenge to Mayor Tate of Anaheim that if the Kings beat the Ducks, Mayor Tate will come up and help clean the LA River, so go Kings, go.
Michael, would you like to add anything?
I don't have anything to add at this time. I'd like to say that I'm lucky enough to be there to help accept that award, but the work of Carol Armstrong and Deborah Weintraub, really, they're amazing people, and they really have done a lot to earn that award.
Mm-hmm. They sure have. And these accolades are years in the making. They don't just happen overnight. So the years of progress built upon a vision that was imagined back in the 1980s from our river father, Lewis McAdams and Folar. I mean, it's just the continuum of progress. It's just great to see. I have one question in particular that I'm thrilled about, by the way. I think we all are, and that is the multimodal bridge that crosses the river that connects Taylor Yard, or the Rio, with Elysian Valley. And I know that the source funding was from a settlement through Metrolink from many, many years ago. How are we doing on the funding? Is it whole? Is it complete now in terms of that new bridge?
For design, yes. As I understand, the construction funding is not identified yet.
All right.
So we are exploring other opportunities to potentially close the gaps in the funding for that project. And
All right.
should we find something viable, we will come back and ask for permission to apply for and receive funds if we find
Terrific.
an appropriate.
Terrific. Thank you. And I have some instructions I would like to provide, and I'm happy to provide these in writing as well once I verbalize them here. And that is, first of all, thank you for the monthly reports. I think this is where river activity is housed. I think this is where we're given a chance as this committee to deliberate, explore, imagine all future options on the Los Angeles River. So I thank you for your monthly reports. And having said that, I'd like to further instruct the Bureau of Engineering River Office to have as part of their monthly report directions and recommendations on all pending items, outlined separately from the list of active projects that the committee should take up. 2, instruct the Bureau of Engineering River Office to report to the next meeting on all pending state legislation that will have any impact on the Los Angeles River. And 3, instruct the Bureau of Engineering to update this committee on the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers LA River Ecosystem Restoration and Feasibility Study. And that's really key because that is such a moving piece of federal legislation and resource that it's kind of hard to sometimes know exactly where it is as it twists and turns and wends its way forward. The report shall also have the following: A, a description of where the project is exactly in its current form, and B, a description and analysis with recommendations of what actions the city needs to take to ensure that the full scope of the Army Corps of Engineers River Ecosystem Restoration Feasibility Study is as directed by Resolution 10-0270-S3. And with that, colleagues, questions or comments? Mr. Labonge.
Yeah, just a couple of things. The Lacrette's Bridge. Where are we on the Lacrette's Bridge?
It's my understanding that the Lacrette's Bridge still has a funding gap that the River Revitalization Corporation is going to seek to fill with an application to the Active Transportation Program.
Would you know more details on that? Because Mr. Lacrette's is an angel in the City of Angels, and I want him to be here when we get this done.
As do we. I think that they're still trying to close a gap of about $3 million for construction funding. So
I thought they were real close. It just all of a sudden got way out of hand.
I think it's stood that way for a bit now, that they need to close that with a few million more dollars. I think part of what happens, they got some more refined cost estimates and help them understand a bit better what the implementation costs would be in full.
Oh, well, you put that's on your list every month, right?
Yes, we will add that.
You got to check with Mr. Omar and see what's going on there. Sherman Oaks has river work going all the way on the other side of the river, on the other side of Ernie's Walk. Is that correct? Have you seen it?
The Coldwater to Whitsett, Sepulveda to Kester that's in construction?
Yeah, you like that?
I haven't seen it
Okay,
lately.
just go out the freeway, get off at Sepulveda, right? Hit the river, you'll see it. I saw it yesterday. I'm proud of you.
Okay,
You're doing a great job. And lastly, I want to just say, members, I'm just thinking, and I know it's late in the day, not now, but late in the day, what I've been doing, you guys all got the track shoes on for a long time ahead. I do believe that young people love to swim, and I do believe we should ask the river people to find appropriately the spot for a riverside river water theme park. Right now, our young people have to go all the way to Pomona or to Saugus or to Orange County or somewhere else to have a very good water splash experience. And if it was environmentally themed about a river, I'd like to see us take advantage of that. So I want you to think about outside the river. So it could be, in there. It just would be something to look at. I don't know why I thought about it so late in my term, but I did, and now it's up to you, Dr. Armstrong, with a great ability to leap tall buildings at a single bound.
I'm on it.
You're on it. Good job. And where's the river? And then the last thing I wanted to ask is the river. Do you say in River Bikeway? Where would that start?
That one would begin near Barclay Street in Elysian Valley, where the current
and drop into the river.
And yes, it would ramp down into the river, and then it would have to be notched above where the area will be ponded for the water wheel project. But it would generally be in the bottom of the river through downtown.
And go all the way through to Washington Boulevard and then back up?
It would actually connect all the way through the city of Vernon as well to the existing path in Maywood.
Which is very good.
Yes.
Okay, that's good. All right, good. That's a little ways off.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
An exciting vision nonetheless.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Mr. Labonge, just everyone can get in the river and join us on May 26th because we're going to inaugurate the recreation zones again in Elysian Valley and at Sepulveda Basin.
Oh, and I forgot to mention, because Dr. Armstrong didn't have it in a report, but we had our third annual river run just a week ago Sunday. I had about 500 runners, which was good. So it was a lot of fun, and enjoyable, and people love coming to the river, which they don't know is there, so it's very good.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Walsh. Colleagues?
Thank you.
All right. I'm going to recommend that we note and file. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you.
And that takes us to number 4.
Item number 4, Economic and Workforce Development Department report relative to the Northeast Los Angeles Riverfront Collaborative Sustainable Communities Challenge Grant.
Welcome.
Good afternoon. My name is Gerardo Rubalcaba, and I'm with the Economic and Workforce Development Department. So today we're here with the Northeast Los Angeles River Collaborative. The NELA RC, as we call ourselves, was a project of the city's Economic and Workforce Development Department. The project was funded through a $2.25 million community challenge grant through the Federal Partnership for Sustainable Communities, which includes the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, the U.S. Department of Transportation, and the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency. This project, through the leadership of City Council, brought together an interdisciplinary partnership which sought to capture the energy of the LA River revitalization as a catalyst for integrating planning efforts, coordinating strategic initiatives, and implementing a comprehensive sustainable economic development strategy. The study area chosen through this project, chosen to explore Riverfront District, was the approximately 10-mile river stretch in northeast LA that is known as the Glendale Narrows. This section includes the communities of Atwater Village, Cypress Park, Legion Valley, Glassell Park, and Lincoln Heights. So this section of the river has been the focus of many recent city initiatives, including the proposed ecosystem restoration, as well as other recreational activities. So the team focused on 5 policy areas, which included land use, mobility, economic development, workforce development, food policy, and placemaking. So over the 18-month period of our study, the team engaged in a very extensive community outreach and civic engagement effort. There's over 17 community meetings held, nearly 667 residents surveyed, 50 small businesses. So all in all, more than 1,000 residents and small businesses participated in the outreach efforts. So the result of our efforts was synthesized into the Northeast LA Riverfront District Vision Plan, which we've shared with each of your offices. This is really one of a 2-part report. So we have a vision plan, and we are working with our new economic development consultant that was recently brought on to develop a roadmap that will offer more specific and implementing instructions. So with that, I do want to introduce George Villanueva, who has acted as our project manager on this team and really helped bring this project together.
Hi. Afternoon, council members. And we can also pass this up. You guys are getting actually a copy of a printed vision plan as well. And as Gerardo explained, the implementation roadmap is also coming for next month's meeting as well. I'm just going to go briefly over the process and then go straight into the vision plan goals and some of the recommendations that our colleagues will also help us kind of talk about as well. So again, the Northeast LA Riverfront Collaborative were funded by the HUD Partnership for Sustainable Communities. We were very privileged to get that grant. Also, it's an interdisciplinary partnership. Our 3 main goals throughout the whole 18-month process was to really kind of explore this idea of establishing a riverfront district in the Glendale Narrows area of the Northeast communities, create a comprehensive kind of development strategy that really linked land use and economic development and workforce development, really linked it together to really kind of talk about development in the Northeast, and also create a model of civic engagement and public media participation to possibly also be replicated to other parts of the city. Again, we brought together kind of sectors from the public cities, from community organizations, from public media, from universities, and also the private sector as well. And we were very fortunate to have these, and also design associates as well, really a robust and very creative team of partners throughout this whole 18-month process. Our engagement process pretty much looked like, in terms of slowly get to, again, our policy kind of directives were economic development, then planning, placemaking, and mobility, and also workforce development. And it also included a study of a regional food hub for the area. This was all combined, and the umbrella that really brought this grant together was really civic engagement and popular education practices around those policies, and also kind of developing media and technology to really enhance that engagement process. The map of our pretty much our engagement process pretty much looked like this, as you can see, and as Gerardo explained, we engaged over 1,000 residents of the Northeast region around kind of workshops, around door-to-door surveys, both residents and small businesses, and also different placemaking workshops with youth and also other members of the community as well. And our two kind of products that we're producing, again, is this vision plan and economic development implementation strategy, and also additional to that will also be a process evaluation and engagement toolkit of the different types of strategies we use to engage the community throughout the process. So to really get, and we'll just pretty much kind of give this an overview and get to our vision plan goals. Our vision plan goals, there's 8 of them. They're in the vision plan. I'm going to talk about our first one, and then...
You got a copy of that for us all?
Yes, it's unfortunately, that's the paper copy that's coming to you.
I like what you got in your left hand.
Oh.
When you're done.
Yeah, I can give you this as well. So, again, the 5 neighborhoods that we're focusing on are Atwater Village, and here we're really trying to leverage the industrial area that still is remaining right by the river, and really kind of enhance that area and make sure that it gets kept, and we actually create some opportunities for workforce development, especially around the biotech sector that is really kind of flourishing in the area. Second, Glassell Park, really a neighborhood that's really diverse and really full of family life, and also some of the most important elementary schools, and our new Sotomayor High School campus, and really trying to create river trail accessibility in the area so that you can actually connect the neighborhoods of Glassell Park to the river, as there needs to be enhancements there. Cypress Park, another strong, diverse family neighborhood. There's a lot of opportunity here for enhancing the mobility around bike and pedestrian access, especially since it actually has one of the 2 Gold Line stops in our Neely study area at the Cypress Park Gold Line area. Our next neighborhood, Elysian Valley, very much strong community, and really comes out because it has the most river accessibility in terms of pocket parks, and also is also going to be the site of the inauguration for the recreation zone, as Councilmember Farrell talked about, and also has a very strong Frogtown kind of identity that we really want to kind of enhance the amenities in the area as well. And lastly, the Lincoln Heights neighborhood of Northeast LA. Again, it's downtown adjacent and Chinatown adjacent and very diverse, but also kind of our plan really speaks to kind of how to actually leverage the opportunities around the Cornfield Arroyo specific plan, and really think about kind of urban innovation in terms of jobs, and also affordable housing opportunities, and also mobility around kind of linking it to downtown. So, again, we have 8 vision goals, and the first one that I want to talk about is really kind of creating a sense of place, and really this goes, there's several recommendations that we have in the vision plan, but some of the ones we want to highlight, we're going to just highlight 2 or 3 for each of the goals. And here, we really, even though we really talk about kind of creating this riverfront district for the Northeast to really connect the 5 neighborhoods, we also want to really celebrate the identity of the 5 neighborhoods. And one of the things we came across through engaging the community is really thinking about how to actually create local NELA tourist maps that really highlight buying locally in the 5 different neighborhoods, and also highlight the community assets and cultural assets in the area to really enhance the not only the pride of the neighborhoods, but also the development. And then another other project that we administered during the grant project is we actually created a placemaking design competition where over 38 projects were submitted by the community, artists, different types of designers, and so forth. And a lot of the projects that were highlighted and won for each of the neighborhoods were really projects like this, and were also honorable mentions where a lot of the community was really advocating for public spaces that celebrated their particular neighborhood in terms of Cypress Park, but also gave kind of homage to the area and the Latino indigenous kind of history that existed in the area. So there's several placemaking projects within there that are really creative and really come from the community that we were really excited about to actually receive. So I'm going to hand it over to goals 2 to 4 to Jason and Anna.
Thank you, council members. Jason Chang, Tier West Advisor. Has been really happy to be able to work on this collaborative for the last year and a half, and I wanted to share goal 2 of our vision plan with you guys, which is really about enlivening the Riverfront open space experience. And the main crux of this goal was to enhance the existing and planning new open spaces surrounding the river. The objectives here of creating more usable open space really spoke to the vacant and underutilized land that remains around the river and how that can be developed into new open space, as well as transforming some of the previously inaccessible and underutilized lands into really more vibrant community gathering areas and fostering not only economic growth but also maximizing the public benefit to these communities that we've been engaging with. Programming public spaces spoke to enlivening the public space with programmed activities, much of which we've touched on with the recreation zone, and tours, events, performances, public art exhibits, and other recreation things. Programs were things that we were looking to steer into, creating more vibrant spaces. And lastly, the building continuity along the river-adjacent greenway spoke to the residents we engaged to really having a cited safety as one of the main deterrents to accessing the river, and making points of access and continuity a priority for this river would really go a long way in addressing their safety issues and making the river able to be enjoyed by all. The 2 main projects that we wanted to highlight out of our vision plan for this goal was support for the Greenway 2020 Broadway Connector, and again, like what George was saying, really leveraging its proximity to the ongoing work at Cornfields Park, and also opening up the Lincoln Heights neighborhood to the river, and below the Rio Vistas project, which targeted some cul-de-sacs, some dead-end cul-de-sacs along the river, and transferring those into more welcoming places along the river to really kind of build a sense of civic pride. And it was a great way to engage local youth to be involved in those cul-de-sacs. For the next goals, I want to throw it over to Anna Espinola, who was a part of this NELA Collaborative, not only through the Department of City Planning, but now also with my colleague at Tier West Advisors.
Hi, my name is Anna. I'm from Tier West Advisors. So I'll go ahead and explain the third goal is to reconnect NELA communities to each other and to the river by providing a range of mobility options. So first, to do this, we're suggesting to improve street and sidewalk infrastructure to maximize connections between the various nodes in NELA, such as commercial corridors, neighborhood centers, and employment centers. We need to provide a pedestrian and bicycle-friendly public realm. So potential improvements could be wider sidewalks, dedicated bike lanes, or even street lighting. The next objective is to enhance transit systems to serve the local neighborhood. In a community meeting, a Cypress resident explained how she had to take 3 buses, a total of 45 minutes, to get to a destination half a mile away. So that obviously shows the gaps and inefficiencies in the transit system where there's no coordination between transit opportunities. And the last is to create a NELA-specific parking strategy. While non-vehicular transportation is key, we still need a guidance for the movement and parking of vehicles. Especially with the growing popularity of river-related activities, it often leads to vehicular inundation in residential communities. And also, a lot of the neighborhoods, such as Elysian Valley, have built out industrial communities with non-conforming parking rights. areas. So in order to encourage much retail and commercial services, we need to create a shared parking system. So some of our recommendations is a local dash route, and another recommendation is actually proposed by the RAC Design Build is an Elysian Valley Parking District located near the pilot recreation zone. So our fourth goal is to improve the ecological health of the surrounding built environment. So the river can only provide social and recreational opportunities if it is at the base level clean and healthy. Its environmental quality is directly linked to the surrounding built environment, which needs further advances in managing ground contamination, surface water contamination, and toxic sites. And that's exactly what we're proposing. So one, to minimize hazardous and toxic waste contamination. Two is improve surface water quality. And another is to build a network of green streets. So some of our recommendations is to remediate the Taylor Yards. It's one of the largest, or the major areas in our study area with the highest level of contamination. And another is green streets. And green streets actually has the power to transform streets into a safe and efficient transportation network while providing for our stormwater mitigation strategies. So, for example, if you've heard of the Northeast LA Trees, their projects with transforming existing parking ways with biofiltration swells. Thank you, and I'll go ahead and pass it over back to Gerardo.
Okay, so our fifth goal was to strengthen and support employment opportunities around surrounding the LA River. So within there's 4 strategies that we describe in our vision plan. The first one is to expand the capacity of industrial areas. So we know one of just the great assets in Northeast LA is just the percentage of industrial land that is zoned industrial. Nearly 20% of the land in Northeast LA is zoned industrial compared to less than 5%, I believe, citywide. So that is a huge opportunity to provide employment opportunities for local residents, but there is a need to address infrastructure needs. So we know within this area, especially in North Atwater, we have a number of the properties that are still connected to that are not connected to sewer lines. Right. So that really limits the amount of job growth that can happen within this area. So it's really expanding the industrial lands, by addressing a number of the infrastructure issues. 2, attracting businesses that will employ local populations. So through our vision plan, we've talked about enlivening the Riverfront district. We've talked, a number of recreational activities. We talked about connecting the LA River to the communities, so Fletcher, Los Feliz, and some of the main thoroughfares. So there is an ability to attract local businesses, whether it's retail or entertainment businesses, to provide the number of people that are visiting the LA River for recreational purposes to the communities. The third goal, expand the educational opportunities and job training programs. So, while Northeast LA has a number of assets, one of the issues that really needs to be addressed in terms of living wage job opportunities is just the lack of skills, in this community. There's something like 36% of the population in Northeast LA does not have a high school diploma, and we know that a number of the high-paying jobs that are being created through biotech and other advanced manufacturing require post-secondary education. So, through our vision plan, we've talked about ways to connect workforce strategies to support the increase in employment opportunities within the area. And then the fourth is really just promoting local hiring policies. So connecting the local population to a number of the development projects that are occurring in the area. So a couple of the strategies we wanted to highlight. So, advanced manufacturing corridor, North Atwater. So, we've talked about biotech. There's other advanced manufacturing that we believe would, already expanding in this area. So it's really about, the strategy is about developing the infrastructure to support it. I'll focus on the third one, the ecotourism initiative. So again, there's a lot of recreational activities that are developing in the area. So it's, how do we support job training programs that support the ecotourism, and especially around youth. So, how do we connect youth to a lot of the summer job opportunities that are being developed? The sixth goal is to improve government regulation, coordination, and oversight of the river. This one I'll just go over briefly, only because this is an initiative that we are really developing through our second report, which is the roadmap. But this is more about continuing the collaboration, especially around the economic development side of the river development, and really looking at a position that would continue to oversee the implementation of the plan over the next 5 to 10 years.
And so goal 7, and I'll go a little bit quicker here, is one of the things we hear again and again, especially in the Northeast neighborhood, is the really concern for gentrification and displacement in the area. So one of our goal 7 are a series of recommendations around making space for social equity, and a couple of the recommendations that we've flushed out in the vision plan are how to leverage the affordable housing opportunity, especially around the Lincoln Heights area, and building off the CAS plan, and also the possibility of creating renter-to-buyer programs that work with the neighborhood housing services organization, and also local community organizations that might want to also help their residents do that. And so I'm going to also move it on to goal 8.
Thank you, George. So sustainable economic development, what does that all mean? That involves bricks and mortar, workforce, education, housing, mobility, jobs, businesses, expansion, public revenue, how are you going to pay for it, right? And governmental jurisdiction and oversight. As we looked at this aspect in number 8, our goal, we looked at financing public infrastructure. One of the great concerns of Northeast Los Angeles, the Riverfront District, is the age of the community and the fact that it was built 80 to 100 years ago. So you have infrastructure that doesn't sustain today's development. So you have to look at that component. As Geraldo was saying earlier, you look at the northeast Atwater area, and you have an area that's still on septic tanks. So that means low density, no development, versus some higher density opportunities along the riverfront, some recreational activities. So we want to maximize also and reuse alternative, or look at alternative uses for underutilized properties. There are a number of publicly owned properties as well as privately owned properties that should be reviewed to look for alternative uses to encourage development and workforce. And then we have to obviously identify funding alternatives to drive that private investment. How do we get enough interest in the community and development opportunities to bring that dollars back in? One of the ways that we feel is very strong in this area and the opportunity lies and will receive community support is adaptive reuse. People are used to living what's around them. There's an opportunity to use public lands for repurposing, and we can facilitate conversion of historic and other utilized properties. A good example is the Griffith Park Central Service Yard. That's about 30 acres. That's along the river that could be used for other purposes such as commercial or recreational. We have also several locations owned by BOE. So there are a number of other alternative uses that could be considered as we move forward as part of the vision plan. Geraldo, next
steps. So as we mentioned, we are a project, funded through the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. Our project is coming to an end. We are now in the final phases of our project. We will complete our vision plan, within the next few weeks. There is a second component to our study, which is the implementation roadmap that we will be coming back to this committee with additional recommendations, and and it's really the implementation strategy for how we make a number of these objectives happen over the next 10 to 15 years.
And Mr. Rubalcava, will you be making those recommendations 1 month from now?
Yes. Yes. So we do have our economic consultant here. We have Larry Cosman and Associates, who is finalizing that report for us. So they're here, and I don't know, Larry, if you wanted to say something or.
I think you're pressed for time.
Larry, before you do, will you state your full name just for the
Yeah,
record?
Larry Cosmon Companies. We're at 865 South Figueroa, proud LA business for over 28 years. Pleased to be here. I think the pedal comes to the metal with this kind of comprehensive turnaround. It has to be at the point where there's enough momentum and enough depth to get private sector investment into the equation. You know, the public sector cannot be the only lifting party here. And so all of this great work, which is truly visionary and pioneering, has to at some point get to a state where it can attract, on a legitimate basis, private capital, where someone in an investment capital fund, a lender, or in a large employer owning land, or a developer buying land sees the value proposition so that they can make the investment in the community, create those jobs, and start to really ramp up the economics in a way that lifts all boats and starts to pay for the amenity package on an ongoing basis. So really, as we turn the corner here on the strategy and vision plan, the roadmap is to engage the private sector with the public sector in the areas of financing, transaction structure, timing, and sequencing. If you can get a playbook, if you will, that will take those issues and put them together so that either specific sites are identified or an area is identified that maximizes the public investment in a way that entices significant private investment, all of the things we're after in these goals and strategies will fall out of that effort. So again, as we move forward, we're going to take this information, we're going to match it with the sources of financing that we know are out there, private, not-for-profit, public, and see if we can put them in a menu and in a glossary, if you will, so that we can have quick, effective discussions with private sector investment sources that say, I get this, I understand what they're doing here, I think I need to come take a look and see how I can get specifically involved. And that will be the time where we truly can turn the corner on the implementation side.
Terrific. Thank you. And are we
go back?
getting to the wrap-up?
Yeah. Okay. So, can you go back? No. Sorry, just one more thing that I mentioned. So in our report, we did ask for authority to transfer savings that we've identified through our grant to a summer youth employment program. So, because our project, there's been such a heavy emphasis on community outreach. With the release of our final plan, we do want to have, a last phase of that where we hire 80 youth from the community and really have them go out their community events, and we're envisioning it as a summer ambassador program where they talk about this project, and continue that phase. So we've asked to transfer just under $160,000 in savings that we've identified through this project to the LA Conservation Corps so that we can fund that program from June 1st through July 31st.
That's a beautiful thing. Thanks.
And that is it. So if you have any
Terrific.
questions.
Thank you. I just want to say, first of all, for the project team, the NELA Collaborative Project Team, well done. Thank you. It's just a beautiful thing. And what I love about it is this assessment report really validates so much about what has been happening at the Los Angeles River for a number of years. And so it's great to have, for lack of a better term, some empirical data that sort of validates what so many people have been doing for so long and helps refine a way forward on the future of the Los Angeles River. And I just want to make a few points. One, well, let me back up for just a quick second. If Joe Buscaino was here, he might like that I want to give a shout out to Allison Becker. Now, Allison Becker is someone who was a former colleague of mine when we both worked for our predecessor, who is now his planning director. It was when Allison Becker went to the Community Redevelopment Agency that she really went after this HUD grant, quite frankly. And I remember Allison and myself convening some of the very first meetings when the River Corporation was brand new. And so I kind of want to give Allison a shout out for helping make this possible. But it's your team and your involvement in the community that really is representative here, and it's just very gratifying to see, so thank you. One of something that I've been really focused on for years now is we can envision all we want at the Los Angeles River, but if we don't have a permanent revenue stream to widen the sidewalks and
create a safer passage to the river from all of these neighborhoods that have been so impacted over the decades, then it'll only be a vision on paper. I've been really, really big on infrastructure financing district, creating IFD, tax increment financing, if you will, along the river in a particular zone, perhaps throughout the entire stretch of the river. So we have a permanent revenue stream for public infrastructure improvements. And I also happen to think that if we can figure that out, that is a great source of the local match that will be required for the alternatives in the Army Corps study. We need to come up with some big bucks for that. So I know that it's referred to a little bit in this report, and if you could just expand upon what you think the challenges would be and the opportunities, and also where this conversation is at the state level with the pending state legislation. Please.
The intent is to address much of what you're asking for right now in the roadmap with Cosmos and companies. We're looking at current legislation. At the end of the day, the vision plan is meant to be the long-term document, with the roadmap being a little bit more detailed and specific as to current implementation, and looking at that 5, 10, and 15 years and what we can do and how we can finance it through infrastructure financing, CFDs, EB5. There's a number of opportunities that are out there that we can look at. And the infrastructure bank, the iBank, those
Terrific.
kind of things.
What I want to convey in the communities that are in this study and along the river, especially the communities that have been historically neglected, for lack of a better term, that's just what it is, how the tax increment increases in our communities can stay with us to a larger degree, and actually we can reinvest our own tax money into improvements that we and our families will then begin enjoying. So I just think it is not just a philosophical argument, but I think it's a righteous one to make. And so we can get that permanent stream. And are you saying that when you come back next month, you might have more detailed recommendations?
Yes, we will.
Okay. Terrific. Glad to hear that. And then in terms of the North Atwater Village recreation storage yard, I produced a motion a couple of weeks back. We are moving forward on the future of that site, both short-term and long-term. Anyone can tell by just glancing there that there's a lot of wasted space. So we want to see what it will look like to get some of that acreage right along the river for more immediate river improvements. So thank you for that. And then lastly, governance structure. So we've been talking about governance structure along the river for a long, long time. We've got the county, there's us, there's the River Corporation now.
Federal, state.
Right, it's it's a lot of sort of hands in the pot. What are some of your thoughts, and you don't have to expand now, I imagine you'll report on that next month as well, but what have been some of the eye-openers for you in terms of governance structure?
Just trying to break down, as they say, the silos, trying to get the various entities to work together. And that's at all levels, by the way. We've been to Washington, D.C. on this project, as well as at the state level, talking to various people. And it's hard to get, oftentimes, a consensus. I'm sure Dr. Armstrong would come in and say, well, how do we achieve this? We have so many parties that we have to placate and achieve this goal to make this development happen. And so we're working on that. But without conversation, it doesn't take place. Mm-hmm. We have to work with each of those groups to show the benefits that are derived from each of those projects to move forward.
Terrific. And lastly, you may know that we are working through our housing chairman, Gil Cedillo, on what affordable housing in Los Angeles, what it will really look like in real terms. So I think that also fits in very nicely with one of the main objectives that you outline here in terms of the gentrification issue. And we have a very firm belief that you should have every opportunity to stay in the neighborhood that you were born and raised in, and shouldn't have to be priced out of it because of real estate increases. So thanks for highlighting that incredible need as well. And it's not just at the river, it's everywhere. So thanks for bringing that up. With that, colleagues, questions,
Yeah,
comments?
just a couple of things I just want to say. That Central Service Yard, was part of the relocation back in the 50s, based on the taking of land by the state for the freeway. So it has to go somewhere, and it's halfway between the city and the valley. It has a great purpose. So I'd be very cautious to say just to eliminate it at all.
Right, and I don't think we're suggesting elimination. We understand that there's a need. The question is where.
Where's where?
Yeah, good question.
You know, I mean, that's right between the city and the valley as far as that location, and right by next to the park. Many of those yards came out of the park in a consolidation, which were there. Also, I think you should work with the city of Glendale. They have a little, just to meet them and talk to them, they have some concepts, the railroad there. And I'd like to ask on the issue of Elysian Valley, how many people own their homes in Elysian Valley? Can you find out?
It was, the renter rate's about 52 to 55%.
52 of single-family dwelling?
Yeah, renting. So owning the house is maybe around 40.
But not all of it is single-family. Some is multiple, but I think
most of it multiple family, especially with the back houses.
Most of it's single-family.
Yeah. Oh, I mean single family, but there's also some of the multiple dwellings in the area are subdivided as well. So.
Right, so that's an important pattern to look at. The other thing too.
How does that relate to the city averages?
It's similar to the Boyle Heights, East LA area in terms of more renters than owners, and probably a little bit higher than in the west side.
We also have some county averages in the plan. I just can't recall the numbers.
Yeah.
So it's more divided from the LA Economic Development County Corporation was able to give us some of the numbers that we inserted in the plan. So.
And we actually have a very detailed demographic report that we can share with you as well.
Yes.
Just another point I wanted to make. For the youth program, how many youth do you could hire?
We're looking at 80 youth.
And how many, what age will they be?
We will run it similar to our traditional summer youth employment programs, which run from 16 to 21.
Okay, so if you're 16, you're still in 11th grade. So they got a year to grow. I think you should hire like 10 from Sotomayor, 10 from Franklin, 10 from Marshall, 10 from Roosevelt, 10 from Roy Ball, maybe, whatever the case may be. Try to get young people from throughout the stretch of the river, from the central part out, so that they could have this opportunity to become ambassadors year-round as well, as opposed to one whole school getting one. But if you could really look at that and then appoint them in such a way on that. But I just think it's real important to look at this here. There's also some people who've lived there a long time and they're very fearful of government. They didn't like the CRA. But you guys are much better looking than the CRA. I'm teasing. CRA is a good thing, but they were always fearful. But if there's a partnership to be able to keep in their home, to better their neighborhood, what is being done now, and Mitchell Farrell had a lot to do with this, is when he worked for Mr. Garcetti, Eric said, go out and do it. The Elysian Valley community is walking on the river. It has, and the biggest challenge we have, Dr. Armstrong, is those high-priced bicyclists come racing through the area when people are strolling on the river. That's why maybe they need the bike lane into the river is a good idea, because people love the water. We like to see the water. I think why we in Los Angeles are special people is not just because that little water, but also the big water of the ocean or any water in the mountains. That gives us the strength as human beings, special to anyone else on the world. So, okay.
Mr. Labonge? I wanted to add one comment to what you just stated, is that in terms of the redevelopment, it took our group probably 6 months to work through the concerns of the public that this was not a redevelopment project, and it's now gone.
Right.
It was an issue.
Yeah, and you got streetlights for them free, and they thought it was a scary thing.
Oh, at Elysian Valley?
Yeah.
Yeah, we only have one other segment to get to, but we've got to get another federal grant for that.
I just want to put a word in for the horses. There's a big horse society up there. Keep them there. Okay.
All right, Mr. Cedillo.
Let me applaud you for your efforts, and then let me. What interests me is I'm looking for more detail, more specificity, and I'm very interested in the roadmap and the for you to identify the potential dollars to pay for this. Everyone's having this discussion, and we all agree. There's a global consensus, but the question is how, right? Mm-hmm. Those are the questions. How do we do this? So I want to know how we promote local hiring. I say that all the time, people say it all the time, but how do you do that? How do you get, if you've got 36% of people without diplomas then, and then you concurrently have an industrial corridor, then that might be the one place where that's not an issue, right? Compared to other places in the city, you've got a large immigrant population also that you have to address. You cannot ignore that. And so my questions are more about how and when we do this. I'm very interested in the thoughts about private capital and what those strategies are and who's going to be interested in this, right? The other stuff, Tom, we're going to do. This safety thing is on the agenda today, and we'll do some of that other stuff. But these are if we're looking at big, broad strokes here, it's going to be in the details about how we get there, and that's my interest is what are the steps that walk us there. Thank you.
Mr. Price?
Just what I say, it's an exciting vision, I think, for the community along the river, and a chance to really engage, the water in a way that we haven't before, both for recreation and for commerce. So I think that's a good piece. Very comprehensive. I like the community outreach strategies, something that sort of could be applicable in other communities in terms of how you kind of dig deep down to figure out where you're going to go and what you're doing. And I'll refer to my colleagues on extreme details as the project moves forward. But talk a little bit about this, and I think that the 80 Youth for the ambassador piece is exciting. I think it's really positive, good use of those funds. Too bad it can't be doubled, implemented citywide, right, in some ways. But talk a little bit about this community outreach effort with your neighborhood mappings. That was kind of an interesting part of that outreach effort, the mapping that you did.
Oh, sure.
Kind of in each community, and sort of identifying the resources.
Yeah, so we did it in several different stages. We did, and a lot of it was asset mapping. So a lot of it where we worked with local residents, and also we actually created a summer intern program where we recruited interns from local colleges to actually go out into the neighborhood and actually map the neighborhood in terms of the small businesses, some of the cultural assets that exist in the area, and also the local media and communication that exists in the area, just to kind of document.
Was it ever compiled somewhere in some document?
Yeah, so it was compiled through several spreadsheets and so forth that we inserted a couple maps that are in the vision plan that document some of that as well. Then also, if you go to our website, mylariver.org, there's also an interactive map, a Google map, where you can actually see some of the assets that were mapped during the process as well. And one other thing we did do was some mobile phone mapping, where we actually worked with we worked with VOC that actually did a similar project in South LA in your area around kind of Ride the Watts project, Ride South LA project, where we used mobile phones to actually do some live mapping and have that actually create a live feed of mapping as well. So there's a lot of mapping opportunities. I think what we learned was it's great to document it as an extensive database, but what really works is if you can get several different community members committed to actually get it from multiple perspectives, whether you're getting it from youth, from kind of neighborhood councils and so forth, that really kind of give a more robust kind of understanding of the perspective from everybody.
Thanks.
I just want to quickly add, and one of what we've committed to developing is a toolkit where we will identify a number of the strategies that we've used, and I can recommend on how we can replicate those strategies in other communities as we look at other place-based economic development strategies.
Terrific. Well, thank you so much again for this thorough, culmination here of the last couple of years. There's a lot to work with, and we look forward to your report next month. So I'm going to recommend, without objection, note and file, and we'll see you in 30 days.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you all. Good job, guys.
Colleagues, in the interest of time, if you are amenable to this, the CEO's office provides a quarterly report on the Los Angeles River. in the interest of time, we could receive and file, and we could approve it on consent, and we could all get copies of that, or we could have the CAO report in person. We'll move to receive and file without objection.
As long as there's nothing unusual, like they lost money.
No, it's nothing unusual.
Got it.
Nothing unusual.
It's actually what's reported in the CIEP component of the
Okay, CAP of the budget. Thank you. Terrific, thank you. We will then move on to item 6.
Item number 6, motion Labonge raise Weezer relative to requesting Los Angeles Department of Water and Power and directing the Bureau of Engineering, Bureau of Sanitation, along with the Army Corps of Engineers to report on the status of check dams in the Los Angeles River, as well as any new opportunities to install check dams that can improve removal of debris and enhance aesthetics and recreational opportunities along the river. This matter is continued from September 9th, 2013.
Yeah.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Mitch, thank you very much. Way back in the 70s, DWP made a check dam, maybe it was the 60s, out there on the spreading basins, which is now known as Headworks, out of Forest Lawn Drive, and it was very successful. And I truly believe for us to be able to take and accelerate in our lifetimes a change would be a series of check dams, also giving the Bureau of Sanitation or other entities an opportunity to remove debris from the Los Angeles River as opposed to waiting for a big storm and when it gets all flushed out of Long Beach. I think that's one of our biggest sins is the debris that goes down the river. So how much does a check dam cost? We have one coming in with the Annenberg Foundation, is that correct?
For the wheel.
For the wheel, and can we duplicate that? And also, I'm just even looking right now, I don't believe the railroads are going to move as fast as everybody would like them. So even in the central part of the historic core, where the great Merrill Butler bridges are, if there was a series of check dams there, when you're coming in on the Amtrak, at least you'll see a wall-to-wall water.
So, Mr. LaBonge, let's hear what these gentlemen have to say, and then we'll
come back with an idea. Give me something to do there, Marty.
I'm Marty Adams, the Deputy Senior Assistant General Manager for the Water System. Adele, you want to introduce yourself?
Adele Hoshkele, Assistant General Manager for Sanitation.
So on the question of the check dams, Councilman, you're correct. The first rubber dam, inflatable dam in the world was constructed at the Headward site. It was invented by a water and power engineer in the 50s. And so we've had a couple of replacements there. But the idea of the rubber dam was that we used to have flashboards in the river. And so they'd install these 2x12 boards. And hopefully that would be to divert water into the spreading grounds to increase the amount of groundwater that we could pump. And then if we didn't get the boards pulled in time, they'd wash out in the first storm, or we'd try to pull them in early October and beat the winter. So the idea of the rubber dam was that we would inflate it, and the one there is about 7 feet tall, and it's about 130 feet long. And so the original one was inflated with water, and then when a storm came, the dam would automatically deflate. And so you'd have the original cross-section of the river restored, so you wouldn't impede the flow of the river and cause any flooding. That dam, I actually saw it as a student engineer in the 80s, and it's next to last year of operation. It went out of service in 1983, and it was not replaced at the time because in 1984 the Donald Tillman reclamation plant opened up and we were not allowed to spread recycled water. That dam was replaced, we believe it was 1989, 1990, with a dam that was put in place for some testing of groundwater, some groundwater studies, and that new dam is still there, but it hasn't been used in the last 15 to 20 years. Theoretically, it would still be operational, and the replacement cost for that's about $500,000. That dam is different than ones downstream because you have a vertical walls of the channel, the horizontal bottom. Elsewhere downstream, such as where the water wheel's going in, you have more of a trapezoidal channel, and so you have a different cross section. And so the estimates, I believe, Adele, about $1.5 million or so is the estimate for the dam going in with a water wheel. A little different construction, got a longer length and a different layout.
So it's to me, I think there's a couple of things that have to be looked at. I mean, we can't just look at the dam by itself, independent of the overall water components and the balance that have to be done. We're working on groundwater recharge to maximize the capture and the reuse of recycled water at the Donald Tillman plant upstream and at Glendale. As you know, the majority of the water in the river comes from those plants. So there's a balance that has to be managed, and we're doing a lot of work being done right now through the environmental process to look at how to do the groundwater infiltration and do it in a way that sustains and continue to sustain the river for its beneficial uses, at the same time maximize the amount of water we are recycling or reusing. The same thing happens with the stormwater capture. So to me, there is a lot of these moving parts that have to be balanced. What I think is going to happen at some point is, as we maximize recycling upstream and reuse, these check dams and inflatable dams may have to come in the picture to allow us to raise the level of the water with less water coming down the river to sustain a beneficial use.
Right.
So I see that coming. The question is the timing of when do we do it. And I think what I'm proposing, and Marty and I have been talking about this, trying to understanding your commitment. I think I see the value. Marty sees the value. The question is, how do we do it without undermining the process of the EIR and some of the things that are happening in the system, which includes the groundwater recharge effort, our enhanced watershed management plan for capture of stormwater, and overall one water planning. So to me, we are going to include that as part of it. I think we need to look at it. We're going to look at the feasibility of doing it, and we'll work on something to make it happen quickly. But I still think it's something that's an important element that has to be integrated to continue to sustain the river while maximizing water reuse. And
Do you think you'll have something in 60 or 90 days to report back?
I think as far as the current dams and the status, we know about those.
Yeah.
But in terms of the future, I think it's really integral to the overall planning, and a lot of it's going to rely on the types of recreation and the amount of water that's required. And so if there's a need to deepen the water, such as kayaking this summer and other ideas as such, we need to look at what role those might play.
Right.
And another issue is that when you get into the narrows where you have the unlined bottom of the river, we'll have to figure if it's possible to do any kind of check dams in that area, because
Well, I'll say you don't have to do one there.
Yeah,
Just do them down in the upstream, up in the valley section, and then down, leave the narrows open. That's natural.
Yeah, because it'd be very difficult to deal with
And I think
that.
our biggest question, members, for the river is how much water we keep in the river. Because we could use a lot of uses out, but I remember the river when it was dead. I remember it was nothing was in it. And also the waste from the Tillman and the Glendale plant was so harsh, nothing was allowed to grow. So now you have this grow and the impact on it. So do you want to hold it in committee, or what do you want, Marty? You're the man.
I think the best thing to do would be to, we can, we've looked at the existing dam now, and we were talking about maybe just seeing if we could get it where we could inflate it and demonstrate to the committee what it looks like.
Right.
I think there's a few mechanical things we have to replace. It hasn't been inflated in at least a decade. So, but we'll check that out and see if it's possible as a demonstration. But I think for the long term, we should wait and incorporate
The big plan. I see. Does Dr. Armstrong agree? All right, so let's do that. Okay, Dr. Armstrong's agree.
I think integrating
With the leadership of Dr. Weintraub on the way, he's showing Dr. Armstrong what to do. I'm sorry.
So integrating the check dam as part of our efforts on water planning, the groundwater recharge, and all that, I think it's going to happen. And we need to bring it together and make that happen, because that balance is important.
Right.
Okay.
Thank you. So we have that instruction. How about a few others? For example, One Water Initiative is currently pending in the Energy and Environment Committee. I'd like to instruct DWP and Bureau of Sanitation and Engineering River Office recommendations on incorporation of these ideas into the One Water Initiative. I don't know if that's been formally requested before or not, but I'd like to do that here. And then, I think it was touched upon this conversationally, but also instruct DWP, Bureau of Engineering, to report on the methods and approaches to ensure the ongoing sufficient level of water for the recreation zone, and you touched upon that, Marty, as well as in the river as a whole. And then lastly, DWP and Bureau of Sanitation instruct to report on the costs associated with the goals of maintaining those sufficient water levels in the recreation zones.
When should they report back?
I would say report back as soon as you can, maybe in 60 days. Yeah, I don't think it's urgent, because I think we're probably a few years away from the check dams, but we do need to start looking at that. I think that of more sort of urgent awareness is the whole One Water initiative.
Yes, and we can, I think 60 days, we can give you a status report.
But what about the kick we got from the court on the $1 million suit on trash in the river? We just
Talk
get
about
it.
the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
You know, I just give you my.
I don't think we got 2 years to wait. We got to get this done in 14
Let me
months.
just
13.
let me put my stormwater water quality hat, Councilman Labonge.
Okay.
I think one of the things that the stormwater and the water quality mandates, and the way it's written right now, it's basically all the measures for controlling trash or contaminants. It has to be done outside the discharge into the river. Once you start doing stuff inside the river, that's not allowed under the permit and doesn't give us protection. But I think we need to change some things. We've done a good job with your help in terms of improving water quality in the river. Water quality today in the river is better than ever. The Prop O projects that we have done has improved water quality. The trash screens and the improved trash screens and the new design, the Tom Labonge new design, is actually making things a lot better to allow us.
Storm drain named after me, Mitch. I hope you do better when you're councilman, but I got a storm drain.
That's not a bad start.
So trash actually is much less, and I think that we've actually reached a 90% reduction in trash getting into the LA River. And I think, to me, if you go down the river today and look at it as it was 10 years ago, it's a much better place and needs to be done.
Visually, it is. I noticed at the Folar cleanup.
Water quality, too.
But even just looking
There's more
at
to be done.
Yeah, just the look of the river. All right, well, thank you. So without further ado, and without objection, we will move this forward. And I understand, I'm sorry?
Will we hold this in committee pending the report?
Yes, please, hold it in committee pending report. And I need to make a technical correction on the previous item, and that is to, bear with me for a second here.
It's on item number 4, Mr. Chair.
Correct. And that is to authorize the sections 2, 3, and 4, or authorize the report as delivered by the General Manager of Economic and Workforce Development Department.
So we're approving the recommendations of the report from Economic Development then?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Thank you. And that brings us to item 7.
Item number 7, motion Cedillo, Labonge, O'Farrell relative to directing the Department of Recreation and Parks with the assistance of the LAPD, LAFD, and Los Angeles Department of Transportation to report with recommendations for installing street signage and other appropriate location markers to the Los Angeles River for bike, jogging, walking paths in order to address emergency response concerns, and instructing the Bureau of Engineering and the Department of Recreation and Parks to identify locations where the emergency call boxes may be appropriate. We omitted in error bike path for bike paths, but that should be part of it too. So it's a technical correction.
Thank you. And we have Tim Fremo of Department of Transportation. Welcome, Tim.
Thank you. Good afternoon. We've had some preliminary discussions with Council District 13 staff to look at different measures to address this. Initially, we talked a little bit about some of the markings and signage as well as call boxes. We had a pilot program, I think about 15 years ago, to implement some call boxes along the LA River and the Bayona Creek bike path. Additionally, I think Bureau of Engineering a while ago had a program where they installed mileage markers, primarily for emergency response reasons. And so they had a specific marker at entrances, which looks like kind of a semicircle. It's blue with a mileage. And then at every 10th of a mile along the river, there was a different type of marking installed. When we extended the LA River path through Legion Valley, we added those markings. Since then, they've become a bit faded. So our recommendation at this point, based on the discussions we've had, is to replace those, install them in thermoplastic so they last a little bit longer, and install them throughout the length of the river. So that would be every 10th of a mile, as well as at the entrances. In terms of the call boxes, we did not have a lot of success with them in terms of usage. They were not very well used. They were vandalized heavily, and it was really difficult for us to maintain and operate them. So given the fact that they're essentially becoming obsolete. On the freeway system, they've eliminated most of them. There's only a handful left. We would not recommend reinstalling those due to those difficulties.
Thank you, Tim. Dr. Armstrong?
Carol Armstrong, Bureau of Engineering, LA River Project Office. I just want to say that Tim and LADOT, our river family over there, has done a fantastic job with the LA River bike paths and the signage. And signage remains a really important challenge and opportunity for us moving forward. And I concur that with the call boxes, now that we have cell phones, they're less relevant, but we did have a coalition, I know that you, Councilmember O'Farrell, were involved in, with police and fire that developed those mile markers, and I saw one just yesterday when I was out on the river, or Saturday. So they do work and they are important. I think another thing that we need to think about is getting signs on bridges so that when people are down in the river, they know exactly where they are. So if they do make that call and they do need to have assistance, and they could say, I'm at Fletcher, or... And we have some on the side, but moving forward, we need to think about that. And one of our opportunities is to look at the river as an important emergency evacuation route also, so that people have a non-motorized way to circulate through the city should they need to. And so that opens us up to new kinds of funding and new opportunities for partnerships.
Great point. Thank you. Mr. Cedillo?
Yeah, no, I brought this, obviously I brought this motion because of those concerns about the safety, and I want to, this had come to our attention. I know that, 2-year-olds and 3-year-olds operate smartphones, but I also know that frequently a lot of people don't take their phones if they're cycling or they're walking, or if you're in an accident, that may not be available, or your phone may get smashed. It's a oddity. It's a rare place where people may not have their phones, we have them with them all the time. And so I want us to consider that as we rethink the call boxes to make them universal, right, so that everybody, regardless, will have access if they have to report some emergency. So what I want to call for is I have some specific requests. One of them, the first one is that one of the things I noticed is when we went down there to evaluate this, as Mr. Labonge had indicated earlier, is that it's very dangerous to have both these groups, pedestrians and cyclists, together. I mean, if there's any place where people want to just go out and cycle straight through without any concerns, would be a bike path along the river. And so we really need to look into how we can segregate those two, so that there can be the seniors who walk over from their homes and who want to take their afternoon stroll, and then there want to be those who take the long rides. Maybe they use them for work, they use them to go beyond just exercise, or for exercise who want to race. That those two should be segregated. We need to figure out how to do that and what the costs are related to that. And so I also want us to report on those mile markers, as you indicated, their current conditions, where they are exactly, an analysis of current street signage, and recommend additions or other appropriate safety markers. The street signage to me just seemed a very, very obvious need there. You can drive and indicate where you're coming if you want to go there. We saw this when we were trying to meet there for the work that we were doing. Yet once you get there, you have no idea where you're at. There's no indicators. And so we've got to look at how to do street signage there and get a cost assessment.
We did recently add a suite of street end signage and wayfinding along the LA River, working with the Mountains Recreation Conservation Authority. Those were installed pretty recently, but there are stretches of the LA River where there are no streets except for the ones that pass over. So I concur with Dr. Armstrong in terms of adding those if you're down in the river to see what bridge, for example, will cross over you.
Yep. And I want to report to see where they're at, because I think they should be almost concurrent with the streets. I mean, they should be like one for every street so that you know where you're at.
Sure.
I mean, if we have them for the streets, we just make another one for the river. And then I'm interested in the existing locations where emergency vehicles have proper access to the river. I mean, that's the other aspect to it. If somebody goes and identifies himself, then how does an emergency vehicle get there? And is there enough access for them at the entry and exit points? So that's my request for a report back.
Mr. Labonge.
I just ask that you work with the fire department, because they have it all numbered. When there's a river rescue, they know where they are. Now, they have maps that are coordinated by boxes and other things, but work with the fire department and see if we can translate, and the proper signage at the areas that you cross over. And if you want, I'll, with my colleagues, we'll all throw in, we'll make a river map, if you want, like this. If you still do it, I don't know if they still use paper. I still do. You ready, Doctor?
I'm ready.
All right, there you go. Okay, good.
Great, thank you.
So that would be good. The other thing I did want to say too, Tim, what is one of the factors that dictates government? Statistics, right? So this is why I think that you should, working with the coalition and everybody, come out how to license bikes, whether it's you give away the license free or whatever the case may be. To know the actual numbers will help on that. I think it would do that. I'd like to see a nominal fee, but you figure out numbers dictate what government does. And I think the big thing down in Elysian Valley, Dr. Armstrong, is maybe having a sidewalk like a little stretch out so people could walk away, because they do come, there's a bend in that road, and they do come, bend in the bank, and they do come kind of quickly on that. And lastly, Tim, I think you should, I see this in Europe, because I did travel Europe, they have a thumb bell. You know what a thumb bell is? You go like this and the bell rings, and they pass to the left. You know, and those people know we got to educate everybody, because sometimes it passes on the right, sometimes on the left, but a little bell tells someone that somebody's coming, and it's not as spooky. So some things I think would be that, and the proper signage. So talk to the fire department. They do have a river team. Have you met with them?
Not recently, no.
Have you ever met with them?
I can't recall if I have.
I'll buy the ice cream, take you and Dr. Armstrong there. They like ice cream. Firemen like ice cream. Firefighters like ice cream. All right. Good. We'll go, Gil.
Yes. Thank you. So I'm hearing a report and file and I'm sorry. Yes. Note and file and report back within 60 days.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And does that conclude the items on the agenda?
That concludes the items on the agenda.
And we do, gentlemen, we do have two public comment cards, general comment cards, and the first is from Michael Haas, and the second is from Karen Flores. Mr. Haas? Okay, Tom. Thanks.
I'll get it.
Michael Haas, PhD, Political Science, a member of the California Senior Legislature. Nowadays, there are some states trying to prevent people from voting, but there's an agency in the city of Los Angeles that's trying to stop qualified candidates from running for re-election. And so I feel it's my duty to report some bizarre developments, and in so doing, I'm representing many others who are observing this situation. Recently, there was an election conducted by the Department of Aging. The election was for members of the California Senior Legislature to represent the city of Los Angeles. I'm now a member, and I represent Hollywood. The election rules are set down in paper by the state, but rather than following those rules, the Department of Aging decided to make up some new rules. For example, rather than holding the election in May, as they're required, the election was held in the middle of April. Rather than announcing the ballot for the election 30 days in advance, it was announced sooner. Rather than announcing a single deadline date for submission of applications, two deadlines were identified. Nobody knows which of the two ever applied, and in some cases, some people were never even told what a deadline was after asking. Rather than senior outreach to get the application forms to as many people who wanted them so they could apply, at least one person's request for a form was denied. The person complaining about the denial was told that the general manager of the Department of Aging was somebody you could appeal to. But when the appeal was made, the general manager comes back and says, we can't accept any more applications because we already have too many people applying already, whereas in fact the position that the person wanted to apply for is vacant and still is vacant. When the person got an application from another source and tried to submit that application was rejected. Even though the position was still, in other words, still vacant, and there were others that were trying to get that position. The decision from the Department of Aging was some sort of a magic deadline, not identified, applies.
Okay, Mr. Haas, your time is up, but we will have a conversation after this offline and look into this for you.
Yes,
all right.
I did want to say, if I'm allowed to make a little comment, that there are many other...
You'll have to wrap up.
Yeah, there are many other issues in the Department of Aging that I would like to and that's why I represent lots of people who, particularly out in Sherman Oaks, have sent petitions and are waiting for reasonable responses and are not getting them.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. All right, Karen Flores.
Hello, I'm Karen Flores, Friends of the LA River, and I just wanted to give you a quick update on the LA River cleanup. So this year we did 3 Saturdays, 3 territories. We did the Valley, the Narrows, and the Lower River. So thank you to all who came and participated and volunteered, many, many people. I wanted to talk to you about the permits that we got. LA County Flood Control District required a permit. They donated some free trash pickup. The Army Corps gave a letter of no objection, but Colonel Colleton came 2 days herself, plus volunteers from the Corps. So that was a great new development. MRCA gave permits for many of the pocket parks, and they donated labor and vehicles. The MTA gave us a permit for the Blue Line. LADWP gave us a permit for Fletcher Drive. City Parks Valley and Metro gave us permits for city parks. City of Glendale gave a permit plus equipment and trash dumpster. City of Long Beach gave a permit plus dumpsters and toilets. California State Parks gave a permit and helped to solve some gate locking problems, so that saved us. Department of Fish and Wildlife makes us have a permit to clean in the river, and no one else, no other entity on the LA River has to get a permit to clean but us. And we spent $4,000 in biomonitoring before each event. We had to turn in reports. So if a municipality wishes to hold a cleanup, they need to go through Department of Fish and Wildlife. Also, Metrolink gave us a permit and gave us donated flagging, and that's just the government entities. So I want everyone to understand how widespread this effort was, and thank everyone. Thank you.
Thanks, Karen. And congratulations on another successful cleanup. Was it year 20? 25?
What?
It was the 20th anniversary or the 25th? 25th anniversary. Congratulations.
We had over 2,500 people volunteer.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And without further comment, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.